But I do want to go home and sit.
Because I do, ones and Tuesdays with it.
Good evening. Welcome to the May 4th City of Des Moines Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Our rules and procedures are as follows. The Plan and Zoning Commission generally is an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make a final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or the Community Development Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicants will be given 10 minutes to present their request, and then proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The hearing then will be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report unless an individual present or a member of the commission requests that that item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. The City of Des Moines is pleased to provide accommodations to groups with disabilities and encourages participation in city government. To better serve you, and when possible, please notify us at least 3 days in advance at 283-4209 should special accommodations be required. Assisted listening devices are also available for meetings in the council chamber. Planning and Zoning Commission meetings are broadcast on Mediacom cable 7.1 or 7.2 for customers with that service. Transportation for City of Des Moines meetings at their temporary location can be scheduled to and from DART Central Station at 620 Cherry. To reserve your route, please call DART on-call scheduling at 283-8136. Calls for trips will be accepted up until 5 p.m. of the day prior to the meeting. Please be sure to mention in your request that you require transportation for City of Des Moines meetings at their temporary location. This notice is intended to comply with the accessibility requirements of the Americans with Disability Act. Okay, we have a quorum, is that correct? And now, is there a motion to approve the April 20th?
I'll move approval of the minutes of our meeting from April 20, 2017.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, any abstentions? Got those? Okay, thank you. Currently, or at this time on our consent items, we have number 1, which is request from 19th and Crocker LLC, represented by Glenn Lyons, for the following property located at 851 19th Street. There is a correction to the staff recommendation that the date is June 15th, correct, for the continuing. Did you want to explain that?
Sure. Chair, members of the Commission, Jason Van Ness and City Planning staff. After speaking to the applicant, since the staff report's gone out, we've realized that additional time is necessary and agreed with them that continuance to the June 15th meeting would be the best way to move forward.
But still appropriate for consent agenda, unless anyone on the commission wishes to hear this. there anybody in the audience that wishes to hear item number 1? Okay, item number 2 is a request from Two Rivers Bank and Trust for review and approval of a site plan. Two Rivers Bank, this property is located at 3025 Ingersoll Avenue. Is there anyone on the commission that wishes to hear this item? Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to hear this item? Okay. And the final consent item tonight is a request from H Glass Partners for review and approval of a site plan 212 East 3rd Street to allow rehabilitation of the building for commercial tenants. Is there anyone on the commission that wishes to pull this item? Is there anyone in the listening audience that wishes to hear this item? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, is there a motion to approve these consent items? Thank you, Dan. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Okay, thank you.
And Jackie, for the record, I abstained on item number 2.
Oh, okay. Did you get that, Kathy? Thank you, Mike. All right, so we will start with item number 4. This is a request from Solid Ground, represented by Eric Grubb, to rezone property located at 150 East County Line Road.
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen with city planning staff. I'll show a couple of images. Just quickly orient everybody with the subject property on East County Line Road, near the intersection of South Clover Hill Drive. Southwest 9th is to the west of here, so this isn't too far east of that, just to give you a kind of zoom in to where we are within the city. So it's undeveloped land, you can see in the photograph or the aerial. Response cards are being passed around. Let me zoom that out a little bit. I'll let you look at those, but there's the map. And I apologize, we had some problems with our printer today, and so my photographs are in black and white. But this is County Line Road. This is the subject property over here looking east. You can see the rural subdivision of Warren County to the south, some of the houses there. Other corner of the development, the east corner, looking back west down County Line Road, kind of same circumstance. So the applicant did submit a conceptual layout. I want to emphasize that I try to unfold this here. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. So we are at the rezoning stage. We're just talking about zoning. We're not actually here today to approve a plat. So this isn't the exact layout that would be developed if the project moves forward. The platting process would, after the rezoning would occur, would come back to you. We do a preliminary plat and you would look at the improvements at that time. But we always ask for a rezoning we want to get a sense of what it is you're doing. Why do you need the change of zoning? This is what was provided to us, and then obviously we just got the better color rendering to show the layout. The loop street coming off of County Line Road with cul-de-sac in the center. This shows a total of 52 lots that are at least 60 feet wide at the frontage. So some of these would be wider than 60, but some of them would be just 60. And that's what is pushing the need for the rezoning from R180 to R160. R180 has a little larger of a lot area requirement. This item was continued a few times. The applicant has on his own initiative with his application identified some conditions of approval that he would like to propose. As staff, we've met with him and gone over some of the ones that, we had put out there. And there are some differences, and then we can go over those tonight. And, I'm going to let the applicant share with you where his points of disagreement are with the staff recommendation and not. I think the crux of it really is the minimum house sizes that we have. All these standards that are in the staff recommendation are ones that we've been applying to rezonings in the last several years, quite a few years actually. And so that's why we're bringing that forward. We've developed these over time as kind of creating a threshold of quality that ensures that the development has longevity that we can all be proud of. So that's where our staff recommendation came from. I'm going to read them really quick just so we know what the different conditions are, and then be happy to answer any questions. So we are recommending approval. Let me zoom in a little bit for the audience. Subject to the provision of street trees along East County Line Road at the time the public improvements are installed for the development. So we believe that street trees should be provided on County Line Road, that they should be provided between the street curb and the public walk and space at least 30 feet on center. Those are the standard distances and locations that we'd use for street trees. We feel it's important as a transition for this new development, even though they wouldn't necessarily have lots that front onto County Line Road. We think it's for the quality of the area. I think that's important. 2 is the provision of a street tree per lot. This is very standard language. I won't read the whole thing. 3 is that no same house plan should be built on adjacent lots. 4 is that each house shall have a full basement. Each house shall have a minimum 2-car attached garage. Is 5. Then we move into some standards for the facade, that they either have a front porch that's no less than 60 square feet or have stone or brick masonry siding covering at least a third of the front facade. This provides street appeal. 7, all windows and doors shall have trim that's no less than 4 inches in width. Again, that's creating a minimum design quality threshold for this kind of residential development. We feel that that's appropriate. Any roof on the houses, it's creating a standard that you have to use architectural asphalt shingles or cedar shake, kind of as a quality and an appearance point. 9 is where we start to move into the lot area, dwelling sizes. A single-story home or a ranch should have a minimum of 1,400 square feet of above grade finished floor area. 10 is the standard for a 1.5-story house with a minimum of 1,600 square feet on the main level and then, 1,600 is the minimum for everything above grade, with that first floor being a minimum of 1,000. 2-story homes would require 1,800 square feet minimum for both floors or everything above grade. 12, exterior materials of any home constructed shall be masonry, brick or stone, or vinyl of no less than 0.4 thickness, or cedar, masonite, or cement fiberboard. Any chain link fence shall have black vinyl cladding, and then the provision of a trail providing pedestrian access to Fort Des Moines Park to the north. So it looks like they're showing that here. So public access easement through here, so pedestrians can make their way to the park. So happy to answer any questions.
When I look through a lot of the recommendations that we generally make, I can see sort of clear places where there are, market failures that we need to protect people against. I guess I've always been confused as to why we feel there's a market failure in terms of sort of undersupply of large houses. And so I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about where the minimum requirement comes from and how that sort of fits with the plan DSM that calls for, variety of housing and those kind of things?
Sure. The history of it is, I mean, essentially over my time staffing the commission, and Mike's time goes a little further back, and it actually predates my time. It's just that as we've had developments come through, and working with the council and the development community, those have been the standards that have been developed, and they've progressed over time. I'm not saying that it's exactly what we did 10 or 15 years ago, but that dialogue started back at that point, and so we've continued to move that forward to ensure that we're having housing stock, that a variety of housing stock in our new development. I think the concern was that we weren't getting some of the more sizable or the middle to upper development. So I believe that's the history of that. With regard to the comprehensive plan, there is dialogue about variety of housing types and those sorts of stuff. I think what's important about that and what we're trying to do here, and maybe the square footage isn't the right road, but until we have, I think with the new form-based ordinance, it has some specific design standards that will ensure quality regardless of square footage and that sort of thing. We're still kind of working under what we have done in the past, why we try to figure out a new way to move forward.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Okay,
Thank you.
So will the applicant please step forward, name, address?
Josh Trickstead, Civil Design Advantage, 3405 Southeast Crossroads Drive, Grimes, Iowa. As staff had mentioned, the development consists of 52 lots. I would like to note that not all these lots are set at the minimum 60 foot. About approximately half of them are 65 to 70 foot. And also, as staff has mentioned, we care about the quality of the homes being constructed out there. And that's why we're in agreement with all of the conditions of approval, with the exceptions of 9, 10, 11, those house sizes. I'd like to introduce Eric Grubb with Solid Ground to elaborate a little bit further on some research that he's done onto those home sizes.
Good afternoon, Eric Grubb, 17389 Berkshire Parkway in Clive. I'm going to pass out some information here just so you can follow along.
You knew this was coming.
Okay, I appreciate your time here today. We did continue the meeting once I saw some of these recommended footages that, frankly, I just did not think were sellable in this market. I'm not a big public speaker here, so I'm going to kind of read off of here, and then I've got some associated documents with that. But we purchased the property 4 years ago and immediately installed coming soon signs for Parkside Estates. I received call after call from those that currently live in the neighborhood, have relatives in the area, or are moving to town. The bottom line question being, what will these houses cost and what can I get for my money? Over the years, I've noticed a pattern. I started quoting in the upper 260,000 plus range and would get laughed at. As I brought that number down to say 220 or 240, I wouldn't get hung up on, but it was clearly more than what a lot of people could afford. The last year or so, instead of quoting prices or potential builders, I started asking, what do you want and what can you afford? A majority of the answers were along the line of something nice and new between 190 and 230. As we all know, new construction prices have continued to climb the past few years, and under $200,000 for a new home, no matter the size, is nearly an impossibility. Modern construction codes, trends, materials, and styles ensure anything built today is high quality and highly efficient. The HBA estimates that regulations imposed by government at all levels account for 25% of the final price of a new single-family home. While expensive, it guarantees that things are built well and built efficiently. There are several other architectural features which I have no issues agreeing to as a condition to approval. We kind of just went over all of those, so I won't go through those. No matter the size of these homes, these will be quality homes. I do have major concerns meshing what the market research tells me and the minimum footage requirements recommended by staff. This is why this meeting has been continued to today, as I mentioned. So I want to dig into some research I did here. Kelly Gibson, the new homes manager with Iowa Realty, shows that since 2014 through today, 86% of sales in Southeast Des Moines have been under $250,000. 45% of that has been under $200,000. That's on that first page there. It says Iowa Realty 2017 Builder Statistics. In 2017 alone, almost 90% of those have been under $250,000. In his opinion, I would recommend ranch homes from 1,300 to 1,500 square feet and two-story homes from 1,500 to 1,900 square feet. The price range of $195 to $250 will be a critical factor to the success of this community. In other words, the footages recommended by staff would apply to 10% or less of what people are showing that they can afford in this area. Tammy Heckert, Iowa Realty's top producer of 2016, doing mainly entry to mid-level sales for Greenland homes all over Greater Des Moines, says that 1,200 to 1,400 foot ranches and 1,400 to 1,700 foot two-stories, both with 2 and 3 car garages. The best price point here is $220,000 to $250,000 max. I have several other emails from other builders. Won't go into all that. So the market says we need to be at a certain price point. Well, how do we get there? Attached, so to be the third or fourth page, is a spreadsheet of actual builder pricing on a fixed lot price for a range of square footages. On average, a new ranch sells for about $174 a square foot, and a new two-story about $150 per square foot. Applying these prices to these home sizes, increasing in 100 square foot increments, you get $207,000 for 1,200 foot ranches, up to $276,000 for a 1,600 foot ranch. Likewise, at $210,000 for a 1,400 square foot two-story, up to $285,000 for a 1,900 square foot two-story. I would like to point out that we are talking about a minimum square footage, or the absolute least amount allowable to be built. This just places a floor and means nothing in terms of allowing homes above that, depending on what the market says people want. I have no doubt that there may be several homes above the high-end target price of $250,000 backing to the park, for example. But it is the market and the folks wanting to live on this side of town and in this neighborhood that should dictate that. This location is untested waters for new home construction, and in order to get builders committed to buying lots and building homes, they need to have the confidence that they will be able to build what the buyers ask for and can afford. If that's $225,000, that's what they need to be able to build. But that certainly doesn't stop them from building in the $250,000 to $275,000 range if that's what people ask for. Like in every neighborhood, the higher-end homes will go on the nicer, more expensive lots. As the developer and echoing comments from builders, we would feel most comfortable to meet what the market is indicating it can afford with the minimum square footages recently approved in another Des Moines development, the Woods at Copper Creek. This was just a few weeks ago, which were 1,200 square foot for ranches and 1,400 square foot for two stories. We're looking to invest over $2 million in infrastructure here without a dime of city funds, and the builders another $10 million, all while creating and sustaining jobs, generating tax dollars, and providing families with school-aged children an affordable alternative to renting or living in Granger, Adel, Huxley, or Bondurant. So that's what I've got here today. Eric is also here with Polk County Housing Trust, and I wonder if he'd like to say words on affordable housing and where it should go.
Before you leave, are there any questions for
Sure.
Eric?
Yeah, any questions for me? Thank you.
Okay.
Should we have a public comment?
I'm sorry.
Anyone in favor?
Maybe open it up and have them speak.
Oh, he's not gonna, okay. So I guess at this point, we'll just go ahead and open it up to the public hearing. So Eric, you are speaking in favor, I assume, of this project.
Eric Burmeister, Polk County Housing Trust Fund, 505 Fifth Avenue, Suite 1000 in Des Moines. I'm the Executive Director of the Polk County Housing Trust Fund. The job of the Polk County Housing Trust Fund is in many ways to make sure that we do have that proper mix of housing available to all residents in central Iowa. We have worked quite closely with the city in terms of Plan DSM. I guess I think that we are moving in a different direction in this city than we have. As Jason indicated, a lot of what you're seeing today is based upon past activity and past precedent, and we are moving into a new age with Plan DSM, where we start to have to make some policy decisions. And so I'm here not necessarily to speak to this particular plat, but to speak to, I guess, the policy decisions that are involved in this plat, which is that as housing becomes more expensive to build, particularly new housing, that we have to, as a community, find some ways in order to allow our middle income residents or folks that we are going to need to attract to this area for our workforce to find housing that they can afford, and many of those folks want new housing. And so what we're looking at, for example, I went back and did some quick calculations based upon some real general, ideas of what folks should spend for housing. And if we can keep housing, new housing, in the $210,000 to $220,000 range, we're talking about providing housing for folks that make about 60% of area median income. And that's for a family of four. Those folks are looking at a household income of between $50,000 and $55,000 a year. That's what you can buy in today's market at today's rate you can buy about a $220,000 house. So it's not like we're looking at subsidized housing like we sometimes, and I sometimes stand behind these podiums and talk about. We're talking about workforce housing for families that make in that $50,000 to $60,000 range. If you start to raise that up to, say, closer to $275,000 to $290,000, then you're talking about households needing to make closer to $70,000 a year in order to afford that new product. And so, at least in my opinion, and in the opinion of the Polk County Housing Trust Fund, what we need to do is we need to start making sure that we are providing that variety. And one of the ways that we can provide that variety in terms of price is to begin to look at what makes sense in terms of square footage, because right now that is one of the few tools left in the builder's toolbox to keep a control on pricing. And so I think that as we move forward, start to take a look at what do we mean by minimum square footages for new construction, we have to start asking ourselves, do we really want to be limiting that tool that the builder has available in order to keep prices for new construction affordable in Des Moines? Thank you.
Any questions for Eric? Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this project? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against the proposal? Okay, so generally at this point, it's an opportunity for you to rebut any of the comments. I don't know if there's any additional thing that you want to add at this point.
Add something else real quickly. This is just a quick snapshot of what's available within half mile or a mile from this site. As you can see, several listings are below 100,000. Most, I don't know if there's maybe one or two that exceed even 130,000. So the homes, the mix of homes around this area, it's not like we're trying to put $230,000 homes next to $450,000 homes. These new homes will be much more expensive than the surrounding homes. So I just wanted to make that point as well. Thank you. Yes.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair? I know we're not looking at the plat map, but if you could, yeah, thank you. If we go ahead with what you have suggested, and I'm not suggesting that that's what we should do, but if we were to do that, we would already be giving you, just from the get-go, as it were, the reduction from the R180 to the R160, which is a big, it's a big step to allow. So my question is this, and here again, I know we're not looking at the plat necessarily, but as you would drive up from County Line Road, you get into a situation where there are a lot of lots that are very much the same frontage. And my question is there some way that we could come up with some kind of an agreement sometime or another whereby you could give more variety to the lot widths, so we wouldn't have the same kind of look about repetition, I guess.
Sure.
I'm looking at 19 through 10 or 10 through 19, for example, and that's a long stretch with an R160 with what you want to do. So I'm asking you that question.
Yeah, and it's tough to see on this because there are no dimensions, but as Josh indicated, the lot widths do vary quite a bit in here, from 60 foot all the way to 70 feet. In new developments, you'll often see the lots are almost the exact same dimension, every single one of them. We do have some variance in between the 60 and 70 foot, and the larger ones are the ones that back to the park and to the schools, which would be considered the better lots. As far as going any larger than that, then you are going backwards in terms of what the lots need to sell for. If you get less density in there, it costs more money per lot, and then your lot price goes up, and now you're fighting against that affordability factor again. So if you go to much bigger lots, those lots typically need to bring more money, and now you're going backwards in terms of price that the homes go for.
If you were going to rewrite 9, 10, and 11, how would you rewrite them?
The ranch, a story and a half isn't as big of a concern to me. I think that's number 10. It's the ranch and the two-story that's most commonly built. A ranch, what was just approved at Woods of Copper Creek was 1,200 feet, and the two-story was 1,300. I'm sorry, that's not correct. Two-story was 1,400.
Any other questions?
I have one question. Eric, as I read your letter over again, you mention ranches between 1,300 and 1,500 square feet and two-story between 1,500 and 19. So what you're asking is less than that. You're asking for 1,200 for a ranch, because I was hoping we were almost there, because based on your letter.
Yeah, that was Kelly Gibson's opinion.
See,
Below that, you'll see, Tammy Heckert's opinion is back down to that 1,200 and 1,400 for a minimum. In the spirit of negotiation here, before you guys even say anything, I would be comfortable bumping that up 100 feet for both, to go 1,300 for ranch and 1,500 for two-story. That would, again, that is minimum. So if you go back to the last page, the sales price matrix, that would be a minimum of about $225,000 for a ranch, for a 1,300 square foot ranch. And then if you go down to 1,500 square foot two-story, that's 225 as well. So that would be the absolute floor. Like I said, most homes will probably exceed that. But you've got some, the corner lots, some of the least desirable lots aren't going to sustain a real big house. So you've got to kind of start at the minimum, and then usually things get built well and above that, but not all of them. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify, so 10 is 1.5 story, and that would be 1,500 too?
Yes, correct.
Any other questions? Going once?
I'll just
Twice?
ask. So, but all the other suggestions you agree with?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I think I'll go ahead and close this public hearing, and then the commission, if you have any ideas for a vote. Or a motion, I'm sorry.
I'll move staff recommendation with the following changes. For 9, I would change the minimum of 1,400 to 1,300. For 10, I would change the minimum of 1,600 to 1,500. And for 11, I would change the minimum of 1,800 to 1,500.
Okay, any discussion?
I have a question for staff. We are sensitive to being fair. So, Michael, could you again talk about what we've required in other developments and what has been the rationale for minimum square footages?
Well, I think the Copper Creek PUD was referenced. That actually was a PUD that was approved nearly, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago initially. And so we kept the same standards as had been approved 7 or 8 years ago for the remainder of the development. But recent, I would say last year or two, the square footages that were listed in the staff report have been typically what the council has approved. In our analysis, obviously, the presence, proximity to 2 schools and the park, we thought could support a little bit, maybe higher value on individual homes. The low medium density land use designation under Plan DSM would call for a mix of housing types on the property, but we're only getting single family residential proposed. So I think we were looking for, in that instance, if there's a more generic, I guess, product, we were probably hoping for a higher price range. When you look at some of the sales data, I don't think there's a shortage of affordable housing in this general vicinity from a buyer standpoint. I think it was demonstrated there's quite a few houses that are well below that 210 to 220 range just based on the numbers that were shown. So we've kind of deferred to past council precedent on recent rezonings for PUD or for plats, excluding, I guess, Copper Creek because of the age of that original PUD approval.
So we have a motion, any other discussion?
I'd just like to, I agree that we want to be consistent, and I apologize for pushing against consistency, but at the same time, I don't feel that square footage is a proxy for quality necessarily, especially given changes in what people may be looking for. And I suppose my feeling is that if it's not something that we feel is addressing a place where there's a clear problem, I'm not sure why we're requiring mandatory minimums. So that's why I felt that it made sense to cut them down. I would be in favor in the future of looking into whether we want to be requiring them at all.
Any other comments?
I have one comment. I appreciate Eric Burmeister, Polk County Housing Trust being here. It's informative. And they have their fingers on the pulse of a lot of need, so.
I have a question. The motion as stated, would we still need to vote for Part A in conjunction with Part B since it's slightly changed in staff recommendation?
I think that you do need to vote on both of them, and you can do it at the same time.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that part of your motion, Dave?
Yes, we can include that in the motion.
Okay. I just want to make sure because it was a different.
Thank you.
So at this time, we have a motion on the floor. Part A, recommending that the commission find the proposed rezoning in conformance with Plan DSM. And then Part B with the following changes. On number 9, the minimum of 1,300 square feet. Number 10, change to 1,500 square feet. And number 11, the minimum would also be 1,500 square feet. So all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by raising your right hand. Got it? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Now we will be discussing item number 5. This is also a continued item. Request from 97 Indiana Holdings, represented by Aaron and Brianne Barnum, for the property located at 97 Indiana Avenue to allow conversion of the 27,600 square foot building for amusement enterprise assembly, warehouse, and office uses.
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Ness and planning staff. This item was continued, so I'm sure those of you who were at the last meeting won't need a lot to get you up to speed, and hopefully we can get the other ones along quickly. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow on Indiana and Ohio Street. It's in the it's kind of north of downtown, the River Bend neighborhood. University Avenue is just to the south of this. Here's 2nd Avenue corridor. I'm going to walk you around the property really quick. This is the southwest corner, and I'm going to move counterclockwise and then come back around to this side of the property. It's kind of the loading dock area. We'll touch on that here shortly when I show you the revised site plan. This is the south and east corner of the property, looking back towards the west. Looking up the side, or the east perimeter of the property, north end of the property. This is where we switch over to the west side of the property, looking south, so the kind of the buildings in the background, the loading area. Undeveloped roads, I think that was a lot of your discussion at the last meeting, Main Street, just looking back into the property. And then this was provided by the applicant, a bird's eye view. You can see the subject property and its relationship to its surroundings. And this is a rendering, and I'm going to point this out on the site plan, but this is back to the south side of the building and some screening and landscaping and an illustration that they wanted to provide for you. So we did, as you asked, we met with the applicant after the last meeting. The meeting was productive. They did resubmit, so this is the resubmittal. It does show some of the things that you talked about, sidewalks along the paved streets, landscaping. There are a few things as staff that we're still recommending be done. And I'm going to flip to, oops, here it is. This page. We tried to highlight for the meeting here, make it easy, other things where we're not on the same page with the applicant. We believe that the right-of-way should be restored, and the screen in this area that should be restored as a landscaped area. There is an overhead door that's impeded by this equipment that's here. I believe you discussed at the last meeting. We feel that this is kind of the route to go. We're also showing some more landscaping here, and then kind of correction of some over paving from previous operations around this driveway. So that's the crux of where we are. Mike was at the meeting with him. If he has anything extra he'd like to add to it.
Yeah, just briefly. So we took the commission's comments very seriously when we met with the applicant. So we did agree to waive the sidewalk installation requirement along Main Street until street improvement is done. The sidewalks along Indiana and High on here, we had suggested that those be given a 2-year time frame to having those installed, which the applicant agreed to in our meeting. So the way we would handle that is a building permit is typically good for 1 year, and there are up to, I believe, 2 6-month extensions that can be granted to that building permit through administrative processes the city already has. They could go ahead and get a temporary certificate of occupancy, but their building permits would still be valid for those up to that amount of time. We thought that would give them a chance to get up and running and then get those sidewalks in. Thought those 2 sidewalks were the most important because essentially you do have sidewalk network, a block away in either direction from those. So we thought we were at least trying to achieve a compromise in the goals of the Plan DSM, but also having recognition of the deficiency of that Main Street right of way. Regarding the truck dock, we did have agreement at the meeting to basically what's shown on this drawing. When we got the revised site plan, they had changed their mind from the meeting on that. The only other thing that we really had talked about is the drawing that showed the landscaping. I mean, they had pointed out, they'd shown this at the last meeting, and I think there was a little confusion over what they were saying when they said they didn't know if they'd do it. They had concerns over whether it complied with code, and so that they hadn't had any review of it yet, so that was what they were trying to explain, and that came out during the meeting. I think the only thing that we would ask about this concept is that we do have some restrictions on fence heights in front yards. It would have to drop down to a 3-foot height in the front yard within 25 feet from the right of way. And so personally, professionally, I don't really like the stair step down of fences when you get into that front yard setback. I think it'd just be better to terminate the 6-foot fence at the 25-foot setback and just put landscaping in front of it. But that was our opinion on it. But really, other than that, those were the main things. So they obviously they did have concerns about the things that are showing not be done on here, but we did have agreement at least at our last meeting, but let them speak to the additional thoughts they've had on those changes that are still not shown.
And I don't know if I need to read it verbatim. It was in your packet, but this is the specific language in our staff recommendation. Just, well, I was trying to get this work to, there we go. Just gotta. So the sidewalk along Main Street, we mentioned that. The sidewalk along Indiana and Ohio, and then the landscaping feature, which Mike has covered and they've shown in this illustration. So unless there's questions for us, I'd like to turn it over.
Doesn't look like there are. Thank you, Jason. So once again, we do need your name and address.
Aaron Barnum, 1510 9th Street. And yeah, Brian and I would like to thank Mike for getting us to sit down with the city and work through things. It's kind of what we thought we needed, but just weren't sure how to get there before. So what Jason talked about, I think we pretty much agree on everything. And whatever decision is made here tonight, I'm not going to argue with it. But the couple things that that I had kind of expressed reservations about in our meeting, but I guess didn't talk about it too much, was the landscaping on Main.
Do you mind giving me your plan?
Now here.
It's just hard to,
The landscaping on Main, if we could either hold off on that until Main is developed, or I would be willing to move the planting somewhere else on the property. With Main being undeveloped, it feels like we're just throwing some stuff in there to get the plantings in there without actually thinking about what that side of the building is going to look like once Main is developed. And the landscaping on the rest of the property, I'm completely okay with. I have no problem with that. This drawing that we had presented last time, and we talked to Eric about it. We may come back and ask if we need to come here just to the city's staff to change that fence to like some overgrown grass or tall grass plantings or something like that. But other than that, the landscaping we're all good with. This corner here where they want us, where we're being asked to get rid of that access to that corner dock door because of that drive approach doesn't meet city code. My reservations with that are, can we zoom in on this?
Yeah, picture. If you want this pointer, you're welcome to use it. You're fine on it.
So this is an interior drawing of the building where I highlighted in green is where that dock door is at. The way that we kind of have our business set up, renting out to other small businesses, the corner of this building with that dock door accessible is a perfect spot for us to rent out to a small business that needs warehouse space and an office space. But if we lose that dock door, we pretty much lose that opportunity to lease that out to someone that's just looking for a small piece of warehouse space. So right here is where they're talking about taking out the concrete and putting the green space in. If we do that, we'd lose access to that dock door completely. If you see,
could you go back to the site plan and describe the previous sheet and describe what's on the site? What is the box or square?
That's all mechanical equipment, electrical coming into the building.
So how would a truck back up to a dock with that electrical equipment there?
Yeah, thank you. So there is drive access now between the west property line and that mechanical equipment. But that's the only way because that mechanical equipment was put there, that's the only way to access that dock door.
I think what staff is after is reducing the drive width off of the public street. Would it work if people had, well, that's not gonna work. I don't see how you're gonna get a truck of any size backed up against that door.
I guess I just don't have a good picture of the street view. The width is there to get a vehicle backed in there. I don't anticipate ever bringing like a big truck or a semi in there, but a pickup truck or a small box truck would definitely fit down inside of there. And then I guess I don't recall talking about it in the meeting, but where this green space here comes in on that other dock door,
Is it the dock door on here? On the
I
west side?
don't remember talking about taking that concrete out so that we didn't have access to that dock door anymore. I thought we were just talking about keeping keeping this access open here for trucks, but bringing the sidewalk right up to it.
So what they are proposing is going to eliminate 2 dock doors?
No, just one. We will still have access to the other ones through this drive right there.
Okay.
And let me go back to this other drawing that I had, if I can find it.
Aaron?
Oh, here it is. I apologize.
So if you look inside the building, and the reason that I brought this was there's stair tower number 1, there's a mechanical room and a sprinkle room, which kind of isolates that whole corner of the building and makes it much harder to access from the other dock doors. And that's why I brought that drawing.
Carolyn, did you?
So the reason that green space that in front of the second dock door, does that impact your parking, or what is?
So yeah, going back to that, this green space, if we cut it off here is fine, but taking it all the way halfway into the building, that cuts off access to that dock door.
Okay, so it does.
And I don't think we had a precise line. I think we were just trying to,
Okay.
there's an opportunity to.
Yeah, that's fine then. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't agreeing to take too much out.
Greg?
So if we had some green space out along, I guess it's the unimproved main and the improved, whatever the street is to the south, but didn't have those little bumps that staff has shown as green, but had a little bit of green out there, would that be acceptable? Does everyone follow my question? Basically, if we take the 2 bumps that go inside, but we leave a little L shape of green, would that help?
Yeah, we could put, I mean, there's not a whole lot of room there, but there's room for some smaller plantings along the west
A little
edge
hedge
of
or
that property.
something.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, a little
The west
hedge or
edge.
something would be better than,
Yeah, and that's something, yeah, we could definitely do. I guess I don't have a problem with the landscaping at all. My biggest problem is cutting off access to that door.
And just to clarify, so to get to the far western dock door, you would come not from the street and around but you would have to, you'd come up along where the other dock doors are. So it's just that little. It's just you come from the east rather than the south, I guess.
No,
is
you
what
would
I'm
come
just
from the
clarifying.
south.
Okay, so
you can't, yeah, there's no way you can't get through between the mechanical equipment and the building. You would have to come. Currently, there's a gate in the chain link fence on the south edge of the property. And that's how you would access that dock door.
So can you just show that entryway for me? How you would get in? Right. Okay. So right there.
Right there, then back up to the dock door.
so you're gonna have to leave access to that dock door from the south.
Yes.
So that little bit of green space between the mechanical equipment and the main street right-of-way is not possible to be green.
I think when we talked with the city, we'll take out the concrete that's there, put sidewalk in, and the rest of it will be green space between back a curb and I don't know, whatever our property line or whatever the setback needs to be.
But would you not have a driveway approach off the public street?
No, there's already a driveway approach there now.
I think so you're
I
saying.
think it doesn't sound like it's gonna accomplish what I was thinking that it might.
That's kind of your drive access now.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can see it. Yeah.
Is that the existing, Jason?
Yeah, that's how they get to it today. And one thing I don't think I probably did a very good job of explaining, this is right now, this is all paved. You know, this is just an ongoing curb cut. And so, you know, we were showing this screen down here as this is curb cut being reduced down to here, pavement coming out.
but I think what Aaron is saying is this is the route they need to get to that door, so.
And from our standpoint, we thought we were allowing 3 truck docks still. We were reducing the width of that from being the entire frontage of the building, I guess, for the truck docks, and giving an opportunity to screen the transformer that's out in that area as well. Those were our thoughts on that proposal. So.
Okay, I have a question. The bit of greenery further up Main, have you decided that you don't want to bother?
I would, what I'm asking is to be able to hold off on putting that in there until Maine is developed, or just allow me to move that same number of plantings to a different location on the property.
I kind of agree. It seems ridiculous to put a piece of greenery halfway up an undeveloped street until somebody has done something, somebody being the city has done something with Maine. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Aaron, are you satisfied with the staff recommendations, the other 1 and 2?
I think that I am, yes. I had one other question, and that was regarding the automatic assessment of the sidewalk on Main. Is it possible that I can be given the opportunity to get my own contractors to put that sidewalk in once the street is developed versus just being automatically assessed by the city to have it put in?
First of all, I don't think it's an automatic assessment. The council has to take an action to approve any assessment. And so there would be, public opportunity to comment on that. And
okay, then that's fine.
I mean,
That's
from that
just what I
perspective,
wanted.
I think there's an opportunity to make that case at the time. There's no plan currently to build that roadway, so I think we're kind of maybe worrying about a pretty minute option.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't signing away to something that might be a problem later.
Well,
I have a question of Jason again. Where in the in the staff review, the recommendations, is the piece about this approach to the dock?
I'm sorry, what's?
In the staff recommendations, where is the business about the approach to the dock that we've been discussing?
in other words, you have 2 compliance with all administrative review comments and provisions.
Yeah, so
signature page.
it's probably a little confusing. That's an administrative. These are what the waivers they're asking.
I mean, I'd like to make a motion, but I'd like to know what I'm,
Right. I think what I would do is just be specific whether or not you want to grant them the ability to keep this access or not, to make it clear and not rely on the staff rec. I would just make that specific. That way we understand for sure in the record what your intent was.
So that's.
It's within the body of the report, and it's part of our administrative comments. The way we structured it, we're basically pointing out the 2 things there.
So is that the southwesternmost dock door?
Yes.
That's the way we could refer to it.
Yeah. So if you're inclined to either direction, I'd ask you to put that in your motion. And then also touch on your thoughts on the landscaping up here.
Jason and Mike, for simplicity's sake, when we're reviewing this in the future, can you identify which bullet point it is in pages 4, 5, or 6 so that we can just pull that back out and add that to the?
Yeah, it's ultimately in the, I believe on page 4, the bottom bullet point. Driveway approaches or portions of the approach that are no longer used are to be removed. Curb and area in the street right of way restored. They initially had agreed to that. It says in here they indicated willingness to comply with the provision. That has changed. Yeah, so.
Some of it's the nature of meeting and letting people think through and coming back, so that's why it's a little.
So the staff rec went out on Friday, and we got comments back this week that they didn't agree with what they'd agreed to when we met with them. So it was really that provision, that bullet point. In our staff rec, we were under the impression they were in agreement with it. That has changed. So it's the bullet point, last bullet point on the bottom of page 4, carrying over to the top of page 5.
So any other questions at this time before we consider this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of the, seeing none? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against this proposal? Again, seeing none, I will close public hearing, and what is your pleasure, Commission?
Madam Chair, I'd move staff recommendation with the deletion of the bullet point at the bottom of page 4. And also with a comment that I've never been an employee of Iowa Paint, but Iowa Paint has been very good for this community in terms of architecture. They built this building, which is a very interesting mid-century modern factory building, and I'm pleased to see that it's going to be used for a good use. And then they built a warehouse up on Northeast 14th Street that was also mid-century modern and very sleek and exceedingly good looking. And then finally, they built the store what's the numbered street that enters into Ingersoll Avenue? It's used for bank now.
Confluence, landscape architects.
Yeah, so I salute Iowa Paint.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody understands your motion.
Wait a second.
Go
Will,
ahead, Jen.
did you want to say something about the landscaping?
Yes, that's to delete the landscaping on Main.
On Main, yeah.
Thank you.
The only thing I would ask for clarification is just, Will, the motion as you said it was to not really require anything down here at all, and I didn't know if that was your intention or just your intention was to allow them to have access through here with some sort of landscaping and cleanup.
I would let that be a negotiation with the city.
Okay.
My own druthers is this is an industrial building, and to tart it up with something that was never there is not necessarily to mine. But that would be a city decision with the client.
So your intention, Will, is to do away with the northernmost landscape requirement on Main and keep the opportunity for the owner to have access to the southwesternmost dock door. Is that fair?
That's correct. That was handled on the bullet on the bottom of page 4.
Right.
Okay, so is everyone understanding of the motion? Greg?
I understand the motion. I don't know if I am okay with allowing a negotiation for some landscaping to come back, because I would like to see as much landscaping as we can get and still allow them to have access to the door. So I think there should be less paving on this corner, even if that is tarting it up. But allowing them to get in there, but put whatever back we can get and still have them have access. And I don't know how to say that. So if we're okay with them negotiating with staff over those words, then I'm okay with it.
Could you draw it, Greg?
Well, of course I could draw it, but I would put as much green back in as I could put back in.
So are you uncomfortable with the word delete landscaping, which is what I heard Will say?
I guess I'd like words to say we'd like,
Said delete
yes.
the condition. on the
Delete the
access.
condition.
Well, he said delete the bullet point at the bottom of page 4, which was.
Right.
And I guess I am uncomfortable with deleting the whole bullet point. I would like to make it a fuzzy one. Not delete the whole thing, but have something left.
Well, and that's what I understood Will clarified, and Jack. The motion, as I understood it, was the drive access needs to be maintained, but the applicant will work with staff to provide as much landscaping and clean up that area as possible without impeding access to that dock.
Excellent.
I think staff would do that, Greg, because they're the ones that proposed it in the first place, and it's in their interest to carry through. So I think you made a valid point, but I think also that the city could negotiate with the property owner to come up with something.
I think I'm okay with staff doing it now that I've said what I've said, and they can listen to the tape and go from there. Okay. So I'm okay with your motion, Will.
That's all I need to know. So all those in favor of the motion as stated, please raise your right hand. Those opposed?
Abstain.
Those abstaining? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll see you again when you're ground opening.
Jackie, I'm stepping down for the next item.
Oh, okay, thank you for letting us know. So our final item tonight is item number 6. This is a request from Green LTD for appeal of the administratively denied site plan 300 MLK on property located at 300 West MLK Parkway to allow conversion of the building at 320 Southwest 3rd Street from a warehouse to an assembly hall.
Chair, members of the commission, Jason Van Essen, city planning staff. The map before you identifies the subject property southwest corner of MLK and Southwest 3rd in the kind of the downtown area, Science Center to the north. The property contains several buildings. Really the focus of tonight's discussion is the southern building along 3rd Street. The northern building has been renovated and is fully occupied and has a variety of uses in it. You can see the parking that was developed from previous approvals. Just a few quick photographs. So this is the southern building, the one that we're talking about tonight. This is along 3rd Street, the area in front of the building where the proposed parking drop-off loading area would be located. And then I'll mention this in my presentation, but this is the west side of the building. This is loading dock that was recently constructed. It's not on the site plan. It will need to be added to the site plan. But it is something that, when we wrote our staff report, we thought of suggesting an option of loading area behind the building, and it appears they've thought the same way and constructed it. This is looking back at the property as you look towards the east, towards the river. When you saw the site plan previously, there was a building here. And ultimately, the owner decided that demolition is the best way to proceed on that. So it wasn't a building of any significance. Part of the original historic buildings on the side. It was a later building, really of no value architecturally. But so this is looking back towards the building that we're discussing tonight and that loading dock area that I just showed you a close picture of. So this is coming before you as an appeal of our decision to deny the site plan administratively. When we reviewed this site plan, we look at our typical standards, but we also have to review it against the downtown overlay that covers the downtown, the greater downtown area. And one of the primary goals of the downtown overlay and the What's Next Downtown Des Moines plan, which is also referenced as the basis for the downtown overlay, is the pedestrian environment and the minimization of auto uses, auto interference with pedestrian movement. Within the staff report, we identified several of the design guidelines from the downtown overlay that we felt the proposal of doing a drop-off / loading dock area contradict, I hate to use the word violated because that seems a little heavy, but contrary to the goals of what it is the downtown overlay is trying to achieve. I'm not going to read through each one of those. They were noted in the staff report. There's 3 or so of them. Ultimately, we feel that there are, doesn't comply with the downtown overlay. We've denied it administratively. That's our position. And obviously, when we review stuff, we should think of it in that terms, but we can also think about, well, what are other reasonable alternatives? And we believe that there are reasonable alternatives, that if we are to kind of move ourselves away from thinking about just the downtown overlay design guidelines, just thinking in terms of what else could they do to achieve what it is that they're seeking. There's the loading dock that's been constructed that now is accessed from the property south, that the property owner, this owner owns both properties. So there's already a relationship, a cross-access easement access for that. And then there's also an opportunity to do for, VIP drop-offs. This is an event center. I think the thought is that in some cases, perhaps this is, limousine parks here, the bride gets out, that sort of thing. But there's also opportunity to do VIP drop-off just along here in kind of the same proximity without having a permanent intrusion that would be fenced and kind of be there on a permanent basis, but also be a slippery slope to allowing other things to occur there. So that's the staff rec.
Jason, I can't read, I think it's existing PCC, that's Portland Concrete, is that what that is?
Yes.
And then what's the one on to the right of it says exist something, I can't read it. I can't read it on my planning.
This one? Or existing concrete?
Come down a little bit from that, right there.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
This is, this probably actually does a better job of. Maybe if I slide it over a little bit, there we go.
Maybe Brian will tell us later.
But this is the existing concrete work. This was warehouse, and this was the.
That's facing Third.
Yes, this is the 3rd Street frontage.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any
Thank you.
questions? All right, so will the applicant please step forward?
Members of the commission, I'm Brian Schiffler, Schiffler Associates Architects, 1440 Locust, Suite 100. With me tonight is Michael Laval. He is the tenant, the owner of River Center. And I've also brought Doug Saltzgaver. Doug has been the civil engineer for this project really from the get-go. And if need be, he can add some history to the development of the entire 300 MLK development. I think Jason did a good job of summarizing this. I'm going to leave his photograph up for a bit, in that it's quite the tale of the tape. You can see that all along 3rd Street, going north all the way up to 300 MLK, it's a very broad entertainment plaza. And ironically, it extends about 20 feet in front of our building and then stops. So our ask tonight is for roughly a 15-foot by 55-foot chunk of concrete that fills in the rectangle. As you can see, there are existing architectural brick elements that march along the site. We're going to leave that. There's also, and you can see it just to the extreme right of the slide, there's a string of trees, existing landscaping. We're leaving all that. The bottom line is that what's the line from Cool Hand Luke? What we have here is a failure to communicate. I think Jason very accurately summarized our intent, but it's just the amount of intent that we're debating. This is our sort of cleaned up site plan, and you can see that the existing concrete extends all the way up to MLK at about that line. And even though the tenant space to the north of ours is vacant, there is a black fake wrought iron fencing in that patio. And if you were to go up further to the north, in front of Guru and Fuzzies and everybody else, all of them have a black fake wrought iron fence enclosing them. So we're really just trying to extend the theme of the entire 300 MLK development onto this property. It's the one property that seems to be left out. So why do we want this 15-foot by 55-foot piece of concrete? Mr. Laval's River Center is going to be an event center. And there's quite a bit of new competition in the metropolitan area for event centers. Event centers compete on many different levels. And one of them is certainly the ability to offer inside and outside space. You know, on the 3 nice days that Iowa has, it's good to be able to offer a bridal party or whatever, the ability to flex outside. The existing port in place, concrete PCC patio is completely roof enclosed. And the idea that we can offer additional space and really complete the concept of 300 MLK is intriguing to us. This is, I suppose this body doesn't normally see this kind of a drawing. I first got engaged in this project to do the tenant improvement drawing, but I thought I would show you the inside of the event center so that you can better understand how we're proposing to use the outside. So this faces the same way that the site plan did. This is to the east. This is the empty tenant space to the north. And then this double door would push back out into the loading dock. The loading dock services the kitchen area. This is all kitchen, dishwashing if you want to know. Then we have 2 big banks of his and her restrooms. So our main entryway is to the east, underneath the overhanging roof deck. Our east doors are for public entrance and are requested for the concrete slab is for additional event space. I think the water got muddied, and I feel guilty about this, in that we asked for a California curb at the southernmost edge of this slab, so that if Michael were to host an event by Willis Cadillac, a Cadillac could be driven up that ramp, up that patio, and into the space. There is no such access capability from the existing alley and loading dock area. So occasionally there might be a vehicle that would use that patio, that sidewalk area for ingress. But it was never intended to be a loading space. It was never intended to have valet parking. The valet parking would be at the very southern edge where the drive runs east and west. This is the main entryway to the building. The request was simply for a broad public patio that could be used to flex inside and outside and service the building by adding to human comfort, not necessarily a parking spot. So to speak a little bit about the event center, this is Mike Laval.
Good evening, Mike Laval, 435 49th Street, and I'm just here in case anybody gets hungry. I think Brian explained it pretty well. This is an eventorium. I think that we're expanding the concept of what venues are in Des Moines. I think we're actually using the space exactly like everyone else, down to the corner of Fuzzy Tacos for events and for ball game nights and for people that want to have a trade show, an all-day meeting. There could be a music concert. It's our front door, and we just want our front door to look nice, and we have some really wonderful lighting and improvements to do to that area, but our capacity is in there for a political rally, let's say, and there's a mezzanine in there of a couple thousand square feet. Is 600 people. So we need a way to get people in and out of that space comfortably. I think that's a rare occasion, but for a 300 or 400 person meal event or a minor size of a trade show or something along that line, there's going to be a need to get into the space and out of the space easily. And so I think this just expands the patio those few feet to get our front door looking like it's a front door. Happy to answer any questions about the River Center that I possibly can.
Mike?
Brian, and Mike.
Yeah.
So, trade show, you're talking about a car, Willis Cadillac wants to sponsor something. Where's that car parked? Were you saying inside? You need to be able to have access to get
polish,
into the building?
the concrete floor got polished today, actually, in there. So it's an industrial, kind of post-industrial looking space, 22-foot ceilings, brick and iron beams. Really, I think that's probably not a very often occasion, but I thought, all the places I've done downtown, whether it was the 4th floor temple, everything had to come up an elevator that was about 100 years old, about the size of that desk, and it really limited what we could do for access. Most places in downtown have this access problem, and that's why we particularly sought out this spot, because you can pull right up to it. What we're talking about generally is if the band is loading in the back door at the loading dock and the cake person is got to set up the wedding cake, that they can roll in the front door, or if grandpa's coming in a wheelchair, how are we going to get them in there? We need ADA access to this space, and I think this is the most attractive method of accomplishing it.
But I think you have ADA, you have to have ADA access.
Right.
But that's not necessarily a driveway that comes up to the front door.
It's right.
So my question is, if it's an infrequent event, could you not put something that someone could drive up the curb and into that area to drop something off? I'm questioning the need for basically a drive approach there for infrequent events. Are people not able to go over the curb?
Bringing in equipment, you could have a trailer that you need to roll into the space. There's really, the loading dock is at the rear of the building. That's what that's for. But when you have a trade show set up in there, say it's a wine tasting event or something like that, there's probably 12 or 15 vendors coming with two-wheelers. They're not gonna go through a 4-foot, ADA sidewalk, I don't think. So, I think it's going to be attractive. I think it's a new concept for downtown Des Moines, and I think it overcomes one of the main hurdles to having something like this in downtown, and that's access. I think that's why a lot of that type of venue has been constructed in the suburbs, is because people can go right to the front door of it. And I think that's all we're trying to accomplish here, is to make it as easy access for our customers as we possibly can.
Mike, somewhere, I thought I heard somebody talk about a patio, maybe it was Brian.
Yep.
And city staff is referring to this as a driveway.
It's a patio.
Yeah.
It'll be licensed to serve food and beverage. It's entertainment space.
Yeah.
So you,
Right, yeah, go ahead.
Jack, I had the same, I think there is a confusion here that even though they're saying they want to put to be able to drive a trailer or a Cadillac up here, it's not a driveway that's 14 or 16 feet wide like we would usually think. It's really a widened handicapped access ramp that's maybe 8 feet wide that's in the end of an existing patio. And so it is a patio and it's not a driveway. And what we are arguing about is the width of that drop out on the edge, but it's not the continuous, I forget the dimension Brian said, but it's not the whole width, it's some portion of that in order to get two-wheel carts to go up at the same time, or a Cadillac wheelbase, and that's it. Is that correct?
Yes, that is.
I would state it a little differently, in that it's patio width, right? It extends south from all the other patios along in front of the businesses on 3rd Street. And if all of the other businesses had 13 foot of patio, we'd be asking for 13 foot. We just literally align it. And so I think the whole drive patio conundrum comes about from the fact that we want to put a California curb that's drivable in the event that we do have to load the interior space.
So you want it to be that whole width?
Yes. We see it as patio. If you were to actually look at Jason's photograph, you can see we don't have to make up much of a grade at all for patio or for handicap. We're going up a foot and 30 feet or so. So we think it can be used as patio space, even though it's a handicap ramp and also a ramp to get stuff into the space.
so Brian, the picture you've shown us shows patio and black fence between these two brick piers. If we look up kind of to the northwest, I guess where we're looking, there's a line there that you say that you're connecting with and bringing that same line right down to the curb.
You can see that corner right
Right.
there.
And so from roughly that yellow post back to the building would be the California curb?
Approximately.
I don't know what a California curb is. I know what a California stop is, but
It's just,
it's not a driveway apron. It's
As
something
opposed
less
to a
apparent.
curb that's got a vertical face like this, it leans over.
Right.
Pretty much every car dealership we've done over the last 10 years has that, because you know where car dealers like to park cars, they like to park them all over. So it is simply a curve that a car can negotiate.
Probably shouldn't have said car dealership in your presentation here, because I think that's part of the fear. So
Yeah, no, cars will not be, we read the notes, cars will not be parked here.
We're not doing outside display on the patio of anything, although almost every day out in front of us, there's farm equipment parked in the city lot at the triangle right there, but it's a patio. And I think it's a misunderstanding that it's a loading dock.
Thank you. Any final questions? All right, we will open it up and see if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor. Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who opposes it, wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none. I'm not sure, Mr. Schiffler, Mr. Lavelle, you have an opportunity to rebut, but there's not really anything to rebut, so unless you have anything else to add. Okay. So at this point, Commission, are you ready for action?
action.
Action.
I mean, I think it sounds like it was a misunderstanding in terms of how the space was going to be used. Yeah.
patio referred to earlier in these pages turns into a driveway and loading Yeah, and then, yeah, and on the
Jackie,
last page.
I'll take a stab. Instead of agreeing with staff, I'll disagree with staff and allow them to do their patio, however that works.
So we grant their appeal.
Grant their appeal, yep.
Okay. Any questions about Greg's motion? Any discussion? All those in favor of granting the applicant's appeal for the proposed, well, I wrote down 15 by 15 concrete. That's kind of the factual description, correct, of what you were asking for. Please signify by raising your right hand. Got it? Is there any opposition to the motion?
One extension.
I was going to say that next. You have it, Kathy? Okay, thank you. So that concludes our items for this evening. Any staff reports?
No, just one light thing. Our consultant, Bob Blanchard, that worked on the comp plans, working on the zoning codes, project manager. If you haven't had a chance, he has his photography on display at the downtown library. It's portraits, and a lot of the portraits are from the recent book on religions in Des Moines that was at Drake University. The Drake Community Press produced the book. Drake students did research and wrote about the different religions that are practiced in Des Moines, and then Bob did all the photography for the book. And so anyway, his portraits are on display at the downtown library if you get a chance. I believe they're also going to be on display at the Des Moines Social Club in the future as well. But I really encourage you to take a look at it. Bob will be back here in front of us here in a couple months, but that's kind of his passion outside of planning. But really great photos. I encourage you to please go take a look at those. Thanks.
Nice plug for the library, too. Great.
I have one. Since I'm still on the steering committee representing, we were on Plan DSM and then the zoning code, but this last week we had our first meeting on the MOVE DSM, which is the transportation plan for Des Moines, which I thought was a clever way to tie it all together. And so we're starting on that, and they're proceeding down that path, and it seems like they're all going to mesh together very well. So it's going ahead on.
Thank you. Very good report. Anyone else? Well, I do want to mention that I attended today the report to the community by our Greater Des Moines Community Foundation, and was very proud and pleased to see that Mike Simonson was recognized for his, it sounds like long-standing contributions to the foundation, and highlighting some of the projects that, because of your support, the city has been able to provide our residents. So thank you, Mike, for everything you're doing for the community. And do we have it's the second meeting, right? No meeting with the city manager.
Jackie, I have a quick comment for staff. I really appreciate staff, and I'm thinking of the Iowa paint and how much time they spent on something that might seem trivial to us, but it was important to that applicant, and it pretty much we thought it got us to a motion, but anyway, staff spends a lot of time on these things, and we thank you.
All right. Any other? Let's adjourn.
They work very hard.
They do.
I'm on the curriculum, but they work very hard.